It's about paying attention and being in touch with yourself and where you are personally and how life is affecting you, and then doing it once a week, every other week, because everything is changing and everything impacts each other in one way or another, whether you like it or not, whether it's sleep, whether it's nutrition, whether it's stress, whether it's your kids, whether it's your significant other, whether it's a sick dog. Like, everything impacts it. And so to just blindly follow your plan without objectively thinking and feeling for yourself is a recipe for disaster.
Good morning, Coach.
Good morning, and welcome to the Crushing Iron Podcast. Today is February 3rd, and it's a Monday. The year is 2020.
It sounded very chill,
Yeah,
man.
it's way too chill. I'm having a good Monday, man. How are you?
Oh, man, my Monday is just cranking.
Did you stay up late last night and watch the Super Bowl?
I didn't watch the Super Bowl.
Oh, not even a down?
I watched the beginning
Okay.
through about maybe the first quarter, and then I went to a meditation group, and I just let the big game go. I did the opposite of the Super Bowl.
Speaking of chill, that is the definition of chill. Yeah, we watched the first. Let's see. Hayden and I watched the first quarter, and then we got ready for bed. And I checked the score, and then went to bed, and then woke up and saw the Chiefs won. So hey, congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs. I gotta say, I had pretty much zero interest in the game, or invested interest, but congrats to them. The city is a insane sports town. We lived there for a while, right when Hayden was actually born in Kansas City. So we ran a lot of Royals fans, a lot of Chiefs fans. They love their soccer there too. And I gotta say, I'm pretty happy for Andy Reid. He has been in coaching for quite a long time, and I always like to see when people like him, who have kind of been, people. I don't want to say people kind of put him down, but people kind of poo-poo on his accomplishments because he's been there, and he's done that. I think he actually wasn't he in the Super Bowl with McNabb and the Eagles and Terrell Owens, and they actually lost in the Super Bowl. But hey, he's a deserving coach, and from what I understand, a pretty all-around good guy, and so congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs. What are you laughing at?
I just think it's funny.
What do you think is funny? Listen, don't talk to me about you're a gigantic sports fan. Now that you just turned the leaf and skipped the Super Bowl for some meditation retreat.
No, well, honestly, I've decided that slowly this has been coming on, but I think I have too many distractions with sports, and I think that's what you're kind of saying there too, is that the big game, the big Super Bowl, just kind of got glossed over a little bit there. I just wonder, I'm curious to know if people are losing interest in general just because of how society's going with all this stuff going on. You know what I mean? If I suppose it probably had huge ratings again, and maybe I'm just in my own little world, but I think the Badgers are enough for me as far as sports goes.
Yeah. Then yeah. I hear you. Yeah, I wouldn't say. Listen, I think that people continue to have sports on the television. I'm not sure if people are as engaged as it used to be, because most people just have games on. Then even if how many times do you watch a game and they go and highlight the fans, and it could be an incredible play going on, and half the fans are staring at their phones.
It's all about gambling now. I feel
sports,
like NFL.
Listen, sports is the entertainment business, and the NFL is the definition of we are in the entertainment business first and sports second. But hey,
yeah,
we'll get off
one
that.
quick thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was watching the beginning. I did. I watched the kickoff. I turned it on literally 5 minutes before kickoff, or 10 minutes maybe. And when they went to the booth with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, and they said, and we'd also like to introduce our other guest in the booth. He was that rules guy, that the replay guy, and so he's sitting in there with them. And they made a big point of introducing him before the game, and that's when I kind of checked out mentally.
Yeah, see you later. I didn't know that, but I could have cared less.
He's now a star.
He's not a star.
Replay guy's a star.
Replays guys.
They're making him a star.
Speaking of stars, you are the star of this podcast. And hey, if it is your first time listening, We appreciate it. And if you haven't caught on, which if it's your first time listening, you definitely haven't. This is the Crushing Iron podcast. This is episode, I think, what, 344?
It is.
Yeah, 344. We come to you every Monday and Thursday, or at least we come to you twice a week. Sometimes it's not always Mondays and Thursdays when other things and life get in the way, but it's definitely twice a week for the past 3 years, 344 episodes, and we cover it all. We cover triathlon for the most part, but we cover all the aspects of triathlon. We cover the training, we cover how your life intersects with it, we cover how they complement each other, sometimes how they can take away from each other. And if we can do our part to share our experiences, both as coaches and athletes, and then also kind of share stories from the athletes that we work with, and then oftentimes as well the Facebook group that we have, which is Crushing Iron Group, to allow you to have a more balanced and healthy and happy approach to your training, then we will consider that a success. As you can probably tell already, we like to just have a very open and loose conversational style format. No sponsors, no ads, just talk, and we kind of let the podcast flow and in its own direction organically, and we usually negative split. So if you're hanging on by a thread and you're debating on deleting this forever and giving us a 1-star review, just give us a minute. We're just getting warmed up. We're getting a good lather going, and I promise we will have some great content for you as we get this podcast rolling.
Ooh.
I know I usually try to undersell. That was a little bit of an oversell, so I retract that previous statement, and I would like to say, please hang on by a thread because we will soon deliver you some specifically vague content you can apply to your own life and make it your own.
Yeah, and if not in this one, maybe in the next one.
Right, that's
So
right.
just, give us a couple shots. I know that's tough these days.
It is. You're totally right though, because there are I've thought about this a lot with our podcast that we always assume that people have listened to it, but everyone has to listen to this podcast for the very first time. And I got to imagine that most people, like the first 5 minutes, are like, all right, where's that fast forward button? Can I skip 30 seconds? Can I skip 60 seconds? Can I skip 5 minutes? Oh, look, there's some actual triathlon content. How in the hell did you guys get there? Because when I tried to fast forward, you guys were talking about your dogs.
I know. Well,
I know.
honestly, sometimes I try to put it in the notes, like when the meat of the discussion starts, like the podcast notes.
You do a great job.
What
of that.
time?
You do an outstanding.
So there's that, but we kind of keep doing this because we love it, and that's a big part of why we love it. I think is that it doesn't have to be so rigid.
That's right.
And
Speaking of rigid, do you have a topic for today?
I knew you were gonna ask. I was just kind of I just kind of felt like the energy of the Super Bowl would come up with something.
Well, since neither one of us watched it, then I'm going to say that. Well, thank you for listening to podcast 344. No, actually, I had one that actually I was thinking about a lot yesterday. I went and
I like it.
Yeah, I went. I hear you gotta like it. So I went, and I think we've talked about this before, but I think it's given the fact that we are ramping up and now it's February and we can all say goodbye to January. We have all these very high expectations about how our year was going to go. And now we've all pretty much figured out that everything's going to change and life has control. But starting February, as we are inching closer to the triathlon season, to where we are racing, to where big things are happening, to where we're becoming more dialed in, we're becoming more focused, I wanted to cover the topic of impact. And what I mean by impact is and we've talked about this before in a couple different ways, is how each one of our sessions and our life and the intensity or non-intensity of our sessions impact the next. And I got on this topic because I was having this conversation with a couple other athletes in terms of why some workouts are connected to other workouts. They don't have to be days off, but they can be easier days. And because most athletes want to know, like, can I rearrange my schedule? And if I can rearrange it, what's good and what's bad, what's frowned upon, what's encouraged? Because again, everything impacts each other. I think the last time we went over this and had a discussion, it was kind of like, links in a chain and how there's only so much tension you can have. But I was thinking about this yesterday. I got up early yesterday morning and had a longer run on the trail. So I started out in pitch black, had my headlamp on, was running, and then around like mile 6 or 7, turned my headlamp off. The sun had come up, and you've run. I was running on Stringer's Ridge. You've run that with me before. It's kind of like there is no. It reminds me a lot of the Louisville bike course. There's like very little like time where you're not changing gears. You're on Stringer's Ridge where you and I ran before, and it's right behind our house. It's up, down, left, right. It's very rolling. It's like a really great mountain bike single track course.
Hmm.
But as I was running and trying to pace myself appropriately, I was ended up being out there for about 2.5 hours. I got to thinking about the impact of your effort. Because basically, like when I'm running, if you're going down a hill, you can see ahead of you. So you have to basically gauge all in one moment. If you're trying to stay within a certain effort or a certain, zone, you have to tell yourself, all right, what effort do I have now? What do I need to get up this? But how is it going to impact the decisions I make next to keep this going? Because you can be going up a hill, and if you're going up a hill, you need to see how long it is. You need to see how steep it is. And then you can also see if it's kind of a rolling terrain, like a lot of the sections are on Stringers, because it curves around. You can see, all right, I'm going up this roller. I know I can probably push it a little bit more because I've got a downhill coming, or because there's a couple of the rolls I got to keep my momentum going. Because every decision you make can't just be a decision you make in a vacuum. It can't be just a decision you're making for that moment. It has to be a decision that you're making intelligently and objectively, that is also going to impact, hopefully, in a positive way, the next couple decisions you're going to make. And they're all connected. And that's why I think like the links in a chain conversation we had was such a good analogy, because they're connected. But in terms of swimming and cycling and running, and the fact that I think we think of triathlon as one sport, and it is one sport. You do it, you race it, you do the events, but it has three distinct disciplines, and the stress levels of those are all impacted differently depending on the intensity that you're doing, depending on the duration that you're doing, and then depending on as well how you outline how you structure your week. And so today I thought would be a good day to outline and kind of just go over how you decide and how you make your decisions on each session based on how you're feeling, based on how your week is structured, that you're not going to negatively impact the next session that you have. Because that's how I was having to think about yesterday is, all right, I know I've got this much time left. I know I've got this many, hills left in this terrain. I know I can't really push it, because if I do, because, okay, let me give you the example. That's the reason I got to this yesterday. And
Okay.
this is because the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 longer runs I've done, I've waited till the last. I mean, you know this section because I make you run it when you come with me. There's this
Hmm.
really steep section there, the last, towards the end, that is just full of like really steep pinchers and curves and kind of switchbacks, in that I have traditionally had to walk and hike them to keep my heart rate and to keep my effort level, what I would consider like just your easy long run pace. I would have to walk them. And the last few runs I've been, and that's basically been like 4 or 5 long runs in order, all having to do the same thing. And so the last 2 runs I've done, and especially yesterday, I told myself, all right, I need to, now that I know what's coming and now that I know what has happened to me the previous ones, I'm going to try and impact my run differently by running much, much easier on some of these very runnable portions to see how that might impact the latter part of the runs. And the last 2 runs that I've done, I think it's obviously pacing, but you're talking about impact here, because you're talking about trying to negative split effort or having the legs to do it. I've been able to run successfully and feel good on those last 2 portions I've been having to walk the last couple of times. And the reason was that because every decision I was making leading up to that was, how is this effort, how is this hill going to impact my ability to either run that last section or walk that last section? And again, that's how it got me to that point, was learning, obviously, with the knowledge of knowing what's coming. And you know that if you're a person who has their week laid out for them, either on a training plan or your coach does it for you, is you know what you have coming. And so you have the opportunity each and every day. We're looking at your session. All right, today I've got to swim, today I've got to bike, and then tomorrow I've got to run. Well, you can pull up your training piece, you can pull up, Strava, you can pull up, Final Search, whatever it is you use for your platform or your spreadsheet, whatever it is. You can get a visual of your next 48 hours, and then obviously you're going to know what you did the previous 24 to 48. And the trick to it all, and I think one of the hardest things for all of us as athletes, is to kind of take that, again, that bird's eye view of, all right, how do I assume or feel like these workouts are going to affect the next one? And if I'm digging myself a huge hole today that I might not have, is it better to just dig it and then try and recover the next day? Or Do I need to make the decision to pull back today, skip the intensity, and see what I feel like tomorrow? And again, that's why triathlon is such a difficult sport in terms of laying out your own training and also the racing, because there are so many things involved. There are so many decisions. It's decision making. And again, that's why so many athletes, I think, get training plans or hire coaches, is because there are so many decisions to make each and every day on each and every session and each and every race that it can become incredibly overwhelming and lonely if you're doing it all by yourself.
Mm. Yeah, for sure, man. Do you have like a, I don't know, an overall strategy that you think about in terms of that as far as, or do you just make those decisions as they come
Well, so okay,
while
so
you're running?
so for most athletes, oh, you mean while I'm running?
Well, in general, I guess.
Well, for me right now, and again, this is like a good kind of I think approach that you can have to your own training is you have to understand the purpose first. What's the most important like what's so we all have sessions that are in our training week that I would consider complementary. They are, they're what I would consider like the your sides. If you're looking at your week as like a meal, you've got your meat, which I would consider your longer sessions or your higher intensity sessions, whatever your quality. And again, they don't have to be higher intensity. It could be 2 or 3 really, really long endurance based sessions. But again, that's dependent on the type of phase you're in, the type of structure that you have to have, and what you're actually going for and trying to adapt. It doesn't have to be high quality. Like I think sometimes we forget when we hear quality that every session is quality, because every session that we do has a purpose. It could be recovery, it could be intensity, it could be aerobic base, it could be anaerobic fitness, it could be anything. So when you look at your week, or you're looking at how to pace your day, it's always important to understand, what am I trying to accomplish here? Is this supposed to be really, really, really high effort? And if it is, do I have it today? Because if you look at, again, if you don't want to ever structure yourself 2 really, really hard days back to back, because the effort you're going to have to try and reach the intensity level you're asking for yourself the next day, if you're doing it back to back, is probably going to be less. So so I guess the point I'm trying to get across is when you're thinking about impact. Let's say you wake up tomorrow, because this is something that a lot of athletes struggle with, and this is like one of the more frequent text messages I'll get from athletes is, "Hey coach, I've got intensity today on my bike or my run or my swim, and the last couple days have been a little bit harder than I thought, and I think I need to take today easy. Do you want me to just do the session and see how I feel, or do you want me to just do the hour of, easier work and then see where I am the next day?" And the answer to that, I mean, 99 times out of 100 is take today easy, because anytime you're adding on to a compromised, body or fatigue level, you're asking yourself, or you're telling yourself, I'm willing to take longer to dig yourself out of that hole. Because stress and fatigue are a combination of everything. We talk about this a lot. Performance, or excuse me, it's physical, professional, and personal. And if you're making notes, because I know a lot of athletes, when they structure their training or they have a coach, they'll write down like, hey, today was a really, really good workout. Okay, great. I need to know why. Did it feel great? How's life great? Was the weather good? Did you sleep 8 hours? Or if today was terrible, then I need to know why it was terrible. Was it terrible because you got 9 hours of sleep and your legs are so sore you can't move them? That means the load is wrong. However, if you say, hey, this run was terrible because I got 3 hours of sleep, both my kids were up, and I was really, really sick, that's why the day was tough. The adjustments are the same, because all the stress you're having, all the fatigue you're having is in life stress, and your physical stress you're putting in a training have now brought you to this point to where now you need time to recover. But it's the why behind have to recover. Was the load wrong? No. The load was probably correct. You probably could have handled that load had you been able to get recovery and sleep, hydrated, ate well, had less stress. But the fact is you didn't. So the change is still the same. And I think a lot of athletes mismanage their training a lot when they look, well, life got in the way. I should still be able to get this in.
Mm.
And now making that decision is now you're telling yourself, I'm willing to impact the next 2 to 3 or 4 days of my training, what's more oftentimes going to be negatively, because I should be able to get it in. Then saying to myself, you know what? It's okay that I don't do this intensity today, or it's okay that I cut this ride short, or I know this doesn't give some people like the hives. it's okay to skip this workout and take the day off to let my body recover and recuperate. Because as much as we want to predict recovery and when we need recovery weeks and when we need easier days and when we need days off, life oftentimes will just dictate when you have to have one. And so when it comes to looking at your week and going back to the plate, is you look at your week before life has gotten in the way and before life happened. Let's say you're just walking in, you wake up on Monday morning, you think, I feel great, I've got my whole week scheduled out, things feel perfect, and I'm ready to roll. You've got, and let's say you look at your week and you think, all right, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday, those days look like the meat of the week. I know they're the meat of the week is what they look like, how they're described, what's being asked of me, and what I know from my previous weeks. Now I'm looking at Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday as what I would consider the sides, the complementary sessions. They're made to, and you hear this a lot from professional athletes or elite athletes. They'll say it's crazy to them to realize and think that the easy sessions and the recovery sessions are when the magic happens, because you have to have rest and you have to have recovery to get better, to allow your body to adapt, to get stronger, to get fitter, and to let all those adaptations and stimulus that you're going for in each of your sessions to soak in and recover and get back for the next time. So you look at those as complementary sessions. So I guess the way when you look at it from an impactful way is what I'm doing going to complement my training and what I'm going for today and tomorrow and the next day if I continue on the schedule, or is it going to impact it negatively? And am I going to put myself in a compromised state that's now going to turn tomorrow as no longer a complimentary session? Because if today is a harder session, let's say, again, going to Wednesday, if Wednesday's session is meant to be of higher quality, of high, it can be longer duration, it can be more intensity, whatever it is, it's more of the meat of the week. If I look at that and I have too much of it, then the next two aren't going to be complementary because won't be able to do them. They will be days off, or instead of being a compliment and basically by adding something to it to make it better, which would be the next day, which would be an active recovery or an easy run or an easy ride, what you're doing now is you're taking that Jenga block, that Jenga build of stress, and now you've taken too many out, and now you're teetering on the edge of total collapse. And that is where, again, each and every athlete has these decisions, not just within the week and not just within the workout, but many times, or the week, it's actually many times during an actual workout. Is it really worth these last three or four intervals if I'm really feeling shot? Or is it, and you've said this on one of our very first podcasts, or is this going to leave me more energized? Or on the flip side, if I continue to do these, is it going to make me feel even more stressed and even more tired because now tomorrow is no longer a compliment. Tomorrow has to be something different.
Mhm. Wow, what a puzzle, man. Because I see that a lot too. People will text me and say, "Yeah, these last couple days didn't go like I hoped. I've got a intensity workout coming here, and what should I do?" And like you said, yeah, just a lot of times that answer is, take it easy today because think about the big picture. But also, I've heard people say, this workout, my legs were, when I started, just felt terrible, but by the end, they felt awesome. So
Hmm.
you have that kind of thing going on too. And I think a lot of times that is probably something to do with, well, if you have the experience and you've been through this kind of thing a lot, you understand that. But that's one of those hard things to learn, right? Is that, man, I feel like terrible today, but then all of a sudden you end up having a great workout and trust in that. That's why I always lean towards take it easy. And I think that there's a thing that we might look at that, say you said a Wednesday workout that has the meat in it. That's one of the meat days, and then Saturday and Sunday or whatever, and Wednesday can be the meat. And we literally just start eating the meat the minute we get on the bike or whatever,
Hmm.
and we ignore the salad, which is like the 20, 30 minutes of, let your body get into it, warm it up, like I just think those are little factors that are super important that we talk about it all the time. Is like, yeah, I don't know, just go out, take it easy a little bit, and see what happens, because there's always that factor too, right? And I think the more we get into this training and the longer we've been in it, the more your body's like, "Oh, I don't really feel like doing this." But once we get loosened up, and you mentioned it many times, but the idea of the deeper you are in the training and the more fatigued in general you are, your legs maybe, the longer it takes to warm up or
Mm-hmm.
get them going to the point where, and we see that always on a micro level with just about every run we do or anything we do. It's kind of in the beginning, you're like, oh man, I just don't have it today. But you might, it's just a matter of letting your meal kind of come to you rather than forcing it down the big stuff right away. And it's easy to do that, but there's also value in that sometimes too when you have to if you kind of suck it up and be like, all right, I'm going to go today. And sometimes that can energize you. So there's just, it's just so confusing sometimes.
Well, no, I think you actually said it a lot better than I was saying it. Is that the decision making process that is training is oftentimes the most exhaustive part, because you are requiring yourself to be patient and to make decisions, not follow through with preconceived expectations. That's the biggest difference. Because, like you said, the longer you train, the more consistent you train. Let me make that straight. The more consistent you train without days off and without taking a recovery week every 2 days you work out, or working out for 4 days in a row and then skipping four. The more you just put days and days and weeks together, it's going to take your body a long time to warm up. Especially on bike rides, like it could take you an hour, 2 hours in a long ride just to get your legs under you. We talked about this maybe 2 years ago. You and I went out for a ride, and I could have sworn you were gonna like turn around after the first 10 minutes. You were like getting out of the saddle, you were cramming your legs, you were doing something to wake up. And I could tell, and I think you even said this on one of our podcasts that year, was that you were almost done. Like you just couldn't get your legs to wake up. And then about an hour later, all of a sudden you were like, dude, I feel great. Like you ended up having like do you remember that? Like you ended up having
Yeah,
a really, really good ride.
think about that, man. Think about what that is. Like to people who haven't been around the sport, and I could have never fathomed that because, like the other day, I was talking to, I had a guy that was running the 15K this weekend, and we were talking about warming up in general, before runs or before races and stuff. And it came back to me, when I started in running, I was doing a 5K, and I think one of the first 5Ks I went to, I was kind of, doing jump and jack, whatever, just kind of get warm before a race. And some people were literally ran to the race from maybe a couple miles or something. They were running around before the race, and I know this is like to people who've been in the sport, this is no big deal, but I kept going, what are you doing? Save your energy or whatever. But the reality of that is, these are the people that were up in the front that want it, and they were running before the race, and to think that you can literally go out on a ride and not be warmed up for an hour or 2 hours is kind of unfathomable to people who don't understand that.
Well, I think it is, and it's something it's very contradictory to, I think, the perception and the mentality that we have going into things is, and again, I think we as a society have now gotten to the point to where we don't like to make a lot of decisions. We like to have these we just like to just do. We don't like to think through things. We don't like to troubleshoot. We don't like to figure things out as much. We just like to click, link, and share. That's basically the life we have now. And then you also have these, it's the easier way is the better way. Or if the fresher I feel, the better I'm going to be. And actually, when I was making my comments after my run yesterday, I got done, and this is again, I think how you want to feel after so many of these longer runs is I had run quite a bit this last week, and this is gonna be my last long run on the trails, and I knew it was gonna be somewhat uncomfortable, but and we've said this is like you got to find out who you are, and I remember as I was commenting on my run yesterday, I said the last 2 or 3 to 4 miles I didn't feel fast, but I felt strong. And to me, that is how you want to feel. But when it comes to waiting and giving yourself an opportunity, listen, each and every day you wake up, you're gonna feel a certain way when you get out of bed. So that's why some of this is so difficult and so confusing. Is you wake up, and we've all done this. We wake up, we get out of bed, the first 3 or 4 steps we take, we like, oh man, I'm feeling pretty good today. This run's gonna be awesome. And then you go out and run, and it's absolutely terrible. And on the flip side, you have the same thing happen. You walk up, you like limp your way to the bathroom, you're like super sore and creaky. You're like, oh my God, this run's gonna be terrible. I do not have it today. and then you go out and run and you're like, oh my God, how'd that happen? Like
Hmm.
we've all done that. And I think like or you wake up from like a really hard session the day before and you're like, dude, that I'm recovering amazing. That did not affect me at all. And then you hop on the bike and you're like, got it, warming up for 20 minutes. Man, I feel really good. You're probably already pushing out more watts or more power and putting out more effort than you probably should because you think and or have already decided that you have it today. And then the intervals start and you do one or two and you're like, uh-oh, maybe I didn't have it today. Because we make all these decisions and then we just all of a sudden have to live by them the whole rest of the day when it comes to our training versus taking the approach of I'm just going to take it minute by minute, kind of give myself the play-by-play breakdown. We kind of have our own, Tony Romo in our head and do our own kind of play-by-play breakdown and then make decisions based on that. And then the next decision, instead of making a decision about a decision about a decision that now I'm going to stick to no matter what and how my body's feeling. And that's where I think that's where we get into a lot of trouble as athletes is when we're already balancing a lot of fatigue. And I'm not talking about like just like workout fatigue. I'm talking about life fatigue. Anytime you take your shovel out two or three more times than you should on a session, the next day you have to think about it as I now have to basically subtract three of those shovel digs I was going to take tomorrow because I've already gone a little bit too deep. If I want to stay close to where I kind of see is like my athlete's kind of homeostasis baseline, I can handle this load. I feel pretty good. I can balance the way that life is doing because looking at someone's life and looking at someone's training, they aren't separate, they're together because they impact again each other very very different very very differently in terms of how you see them. You might see stress as work as just work and you might see stress during working out just as working out, but they're all the same. We talked about this a ton, but when it comes to impacting your training, you look at your week and that's again like that's why I wish like if I could create like my own training peaks like platform that was like training, I would have it to where workouts and like everyone has, well not everyone but a lot of people have like an online like Google Calendar or something where you could sync them together to where you could see like really a long meeting today with my boss or taking the kids to soccer 8 games this weekend like that. Again, that's how it should be when you look at the whole global picture of an athlete's week. It's not just okay, today is active recovery day for an hour, so tomorrow you should be great. But what you don't see if you don't look at it that way, you don't communicate or you don't have somebody that's asking is, well, what if today was scheduled as a 60-minute recovery day, and what if you did that in the morning, and then what if the rest of the day was the worst day at work you've had in 5 years? What if you had to work 14 hours? What if you skipped lunch? What if you then had to go out with, your sales team and schmooze some people and you had, two martinis, a cheese dip, and a hot dog. And then you wake up the next day and you don't communicate that or you don't take that into account because all you see is, well, yesterday was a quote unquote recovery day. How do you think you're going to feel the next day? You're going to feel like crap.
Mm.
So the meat that was about to come now needs to stay in the oven a little bit longer. And now you need to have another complimentary day until you've gotten your body to where it can again absorb the meat of the training that you're about to give it. Because if you don't and you overeat, what happens? Your body rejects it and things come out. Well, that's kind of like gross, but that's what happens. Your body's going to say, no, I can't take this. I've had enough. And now you feel sick. And now you feel full. And now you feel sluggish. And now you feel done. That is what happens when you don't look at your whole life and you don't look at training and life as they intersect and how they connect like a puzzle. Because triathlon is already very difficult, I think, for a lot of people to wrap their brains around how they complement each other, but then how the loads and stresses can differ, and then how they can affect each other. And then you add in the other part, which is what happens to your other 95% of you, which is your job, your relationships, your life, personal stresses, good and bad. And then you think, all right, how in the heck am I supposed to balance this? Like, how am I supposed to take a sport that is essentially three sports in one, but now I got to do them all in succession and combine them all, and take into account nutrition and take into account when I need to be ready for this race that I signed up for. Then I need to take into account this promotion that I got and the move I have to make and the relationship that I'm in, and my kids that are sick. Like all those moving parts. That's why so many triathletes find themselves getting burnt out and frustrated and impacting their training in a negative way, is because they are in love with order and structure, and they have a what I would consider a um, rejection of being flexible. And if you're not a flexible athlete and you don't know how to just take it, and again, I think that is most people's personality. That's a lot of people's personality. It's not like a personality flaw, but I think when you're looking at a sport that you have a lot of type A athletes that like structure, they like exactness, they like numbers, being flexible is not in their vocabulary. It's, oh no, today we have to do this today. It has to be done today because it's on the schedule. Moving around is not an option. You rarely actually ever want to see an athlete, because coaches aren't perfect. I'm far from perfect. But if you see an athlete who has, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row with no moved workouts, no skipped, and every workout is what looks like nailed, you're either on an incredible perfect streak with your athlete where you're both communicating great and both a perfect load, or the athlete is probably not communicating enough because they're not telling you that they're actually kind of tired, because misses and days off are actually a good thing. I'm not a fan of scheduling them all the time, but they're actually a good thing, because what you want to see athletes do is show flexibility, show objectivity, and show the fact they're very in touch with who they are and how they're feeling. Because one day off you can take as many times as you want to when it's one day here, one day there. What you don't want is to impact your training so negatively by shoving it down your throat to where you should have taken a day off, but you didn't. And then the next day you're like, but I got this, this streak going and I got to keep it again. And now these 2 days that you could have taken easier, just taking one day off, is now going to turn into 2 weeks. It's all connected. They're all links in a chain. And every single day you make a decision on how you're going to impact yourself and your stress levels in your body. Are you going to be able to physiologically adapt and get the, intended stimulus from this session, or are you going to impact it negatively? And now are we going to have to basically erase or scratch out the next 3 or 4 days just to get you back to a point to where you can absorb it? Because just because you do a session, I think we naively think all the time, just because your body can do a session, we automatically think it's going to absorb it the exact way we want to and get the exact stimulus we want to from it just because I did it. But if you look at a sponge, what do you do to the sponge to get it to soak up the water if it's underwater? You squeeze it, right? You squeeze the sponge and then you let it loose underwater and it soaks in all this water. If you don't, and what'll happen? Most sponge will just lay on top of the water and float. It's about, that's how you have to think about your training and your load and if your body is ready to absorb it or not. Is if you come and do a session, you feel great and you've made good decisions that week, you've listened to your body, you pay attention to recovery, you've gotten the sleep you need, and you've eaten the things you're supposed to eat, then you're going into it, you're dipping that sponge, into your fist, balled up, and then you're releasing in the water, and it's soaking up that workout, and it's ready to release it at the right point. But if you're not, and you can't make that squeeze, then your sponge is basically going to sit on top of that water and you're going to absorb nothing. Did it come in contact with the water? Yep. Did it absorb any of it? No. But it got wet, so it knows it got in contact with the water, but that's not the same as absorbing it. And that's how we need to think about our training. Are we able to absorb it? Now, is it all going to feel great? Are we all going to feel perfect after 10 or 15, 20 minutes on a run, or an hour and a half on the bike? No. But the point is that that's how you need to decide each day, not before you wake up the previous day that I'm going to nail this workout, not 1 second into it, not when your feet hit the floor. It's how you're feeling as you're going. You have to make real time decisions. Is it time to pull the plug? Is it time to press forward? Is it time to just get it done? Or is it time to take the day off? And that is the most exhausting and overwhelming part of, I think, the training process for most people, because I hear it all the time when athletes ask about working with us, or you've worked with them for a while, and I think, hey, what's been your best part of training? What do you think? And a lot of times, oh, well, it's the PRs, it's the great runs, great rides. A lot of times, it's the stress. They're like, I don't have to think anymore. I can just do it. I'm not stressed about missing things. I'm not stressed about if I'm doing it right. I'm not stressed about is a load wrong. I have somebody telling me to take a day off. I have somebody telling me it's okay to do these things. Like, it's relieving stress. And if you think about it, when it comes to the fact that stress is stress, and that impacts our training, a lot of your training can be maximized just by removing stress. And if you are stressing about getting in sessions, if you're stressing about, your priorities, and if you're going to, do this race on this timeline and meet these expectations, that's stress. It's impacting you negatively. You need to be able to train free. You need to clear your mind. And for some people, not everyone, but for a lot of people, it's you need help removing that stress, or you need help managing that stress. That is 95% of the job of a coach, is how can I help you manage your stress? And a lot of times it comes as easy as just saying, yeah, dude, take the day off. Or that was okay. You needed it. And good job. Like, I think we as a society too have like gotten so far removed from giving like positive affirmations to people, because we all just want to give our negative feedback or our criticism based on what we know, or we really don't want to tell you all the times that you're right. We just want to tell you the times that you're wrong. But when it comes to positive affirmation, especially with athletes, if you're a coach and you're listening, like, that's a huge deal, is saying, hey dude, good job taking that day off. Because one of the biggest ways you have to work with athletes on their, whether it's their personality, whether it's kind of mental barriers and obstacles, or just the way that they've been wired or their past experiences, is you have to empower them to think for themselves. Like, coaching isn't a dictatorship. You think through that. It is like, I had an athlete that I work with. Just earlier today, message this. She says, thank you for being the first coach to let me finally realize that family time comes first, and then not feel guilty for it. It's taken me years to get out of my head, and you still see I'm working through it, but I'm telling you right now, just letting go and doing the family travel that I'm doing now would have been something of massive anxiety in the past. My first thought packing would have been, when am I going to train? Where should I bring my bike? Where can I find a pool? This is what I've been searching for years, and what my husband has craved for our relationship, in our family, for a very long time. Thanks for helping me get to that point. That right there is, again, it's like that's 95% of coaching, is removing the stress and the exhaustive thought process of decisions that we have to make, not oftentimes based on the time we want to get later at a race or the performance level we want to reach as an athlete. It's the stress and exhaustive mentality that we put on ourselves based on these expectations that we heap. Like, life itself is exhausting. There are so many things in life that cause us stress. And the sport that we do, the training that we participate in, the people that we surround ourselves with, and the relationships that we invest in should help remove those, or should be a shoulder to lean on, a ear for us to talk to. And I just think it's one of those important things that we forget about as these type A athletes, or these, selfish triathletes, is that, like, life's already hard enough. Life already has enough moving parts. Life already has enough, opportunities to make you feel stressed and anxious and guilty and shameful. Like, why should we do that to ourselves in training? Why shouldn't it be a stress relief? And why shouldn't it empower us and feel better, and allow ourselves to make these positive decisions? But again, that's also why it's hard, because there are so many decisions that sometimes you just don't want to make them, because every single day we wake up and we make a million different decisions that are going to impact our life differently from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed. And triathlon is just one more, piece of that, with multiple decisions in every facet of every training that you're doing every day.
Yeah, man.
You've been trying not to say it,
I know I have.
but it's you, man. It's you.
I'm
It's
still thinking
authentically
about
you.
the sponge analogy, honestly. No, but
Was that a
look,
bad one? I don't even know what that means.
no,
Was that?
no, I think it's a good one. It's just, I think it's a little bit one of those Zen tongue twisters. Like, I have to figure it out. But no, it makes sense to me, honestly. Yeah, all that stuff you're saying, right? I've been actually struggling a little bit lately. So, if I a quick Super Bowl analogy. We talk about this one all the time, and we thought we were going to bring it up because somebody mentioned it in the group. But the Chiefs were kind of like laying low, and then they just poured it on at the end, right? That's the negative split mentality analogy that we always use. And when we think about that in terms of whatever it is, team sports or individual sports or training or whatever, if see like one of my big problems, and I think a lot of people might struggle with this, is the idea that we're in our head. And you mentioned earlier that sometimes we wake up and we're like, oh yeah, man, I'm bouncy today and I'm gonna go get it. And other times we struggle and we're kind of like slow. I think that we have to break down, or at least I try to break down, and I'm not very good at it, each day, each week, each month, and think about it in terms of, and this is kind of the overall theme of what you're talking about, is negative split mentality of the day. Because sometimes I will wake up and I'll be like, man, I feel great today. And I'll sit down and I'll start working and I'll just start jamming everything into the first couple hours and just be, and then I'm like, maybe like 10:30, I'll be like, uh-oh, I just really exhausted my mental capacities. And if you read about, or, all these gurus today about morning, what's that called? Morning habits or whatever,
Hmm.
and you get up and you just sort of like slowly roll over and kind of put your feet on the floor and then just be grateful and meditate and sort of don't think about anything and just sort of let the day come to you. And I'm always thinking about how do we do that within workouts too, right? And that's the whole point that I'm getting at, is because sometimes if I feel great before a workout, and I think, and so many times that's just in your head,
Hmm.
because your body, is basically what has been happening to it, and it can either perform based on how you've been fueling, sleeping, your stress levels, all that kind of stuff. But for whatever reason, you may feel great in your mind about today's workout. So suddenly, this is what I'll do: is if I have an interval workout, I'll be like, all right, well, I feel good, man. I'm going to go out instead of my 20-minute warm up. I'm going to go out and maybe push that a run, maybe like see what happens. Next thing I know, I'm like running like a minute pace faster than I normally would warm up.
Hmm.
And the next thing you know, I'm into an interval. And the next thing you know, by the end of those things, I'm
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's such a little thing, but and then by the end of it, you're dragging to get home. And whether that's for individual workouts or for the whole week, I just think it's important to kind of step back from what you think you are in your mind right now and just follow the plan. And that's the patience piece that you always talk about, is we have to be patient with the whole day, with the whole week, with the whole month. And it's just one of those things that isn't sexy, but it's just so important in the long term. And I think that's, I mean, you've figured it out a lot better than I have, but I think that mentally, like, that's the approach to life, right? Like, I'm so up and down in general, and searching for, like, oh, today's, oh man, I'm back, I'm signing up for, like, I'll do shit like that all the time. And it's so easy to do, I think, because a lot of times we do look for a carrot or something shiny that's going to kind of motivate us out of our little funk or whatever we're dealing with. And I just think it's important to even if you're not feeling jacked about a workout, to kind of like settle down and understand that it's okay and let it come to you no matter what it is. Or if you're overhyped, back it down a little bit and just get a good perspective on things and what you're going into, because it's just I'm talking from my perspective, but it's sort of like I get the idea that today's workout may feel like or seem like in your mind as you know kind of the difference maker or whatever. You know what I mean? I need to prove to myself today
Hmm.
that I still have it, and that's the danger zone.
One of the biggest danger zones, I mean, I think you said it really, really well, is like you rarely ever hear people say, you know what, I left way too much on the table at the end of that race. I had way too much. I played it
Yep.
way too safe. Or you never call somebody, and like you're texting at 5 or 6 at night, and they're like, "Yeah, man, I'm wired. I haven't done anything today. I really should have gone out and done way more this morning or done that." No, they're like, "Dude, I'm exhausted. I have nothing left to give." And I think like when you look at training and you look at racing and you look at decision making, you look at trying to, we always talk about negative splitting life and splitting anything or being able to have that effort as I think it takes a tremendous amount of practice. And the reason I think it doesn't just take practice, but it takes continuous practice is because our ability to gauge that effort and the ability to know what effort we have is always changing. Like we can pace ourselves, we can go by effort, but if we stick to a pace and if we continue to drive our train towards that, or we have this level that we kind of recognize within ourselves, the negative split or the impact of pace or the increase of power or whatever you're trying to do in your event is going to look different based on the rest of life. You could run like, you've had, a pretty rough patch here the last few weeks with your dad passing away, and you traveled a lot, and it's a hard thing. And so if you had looked at the way a negative split effort and the amount of effort, which I think is one of the hardest things for people to wrap their mind around, is that we had this podcast, I think maybe 4 or 5 months ago, was, you're kind of always late to your own party.
Mhm.
You're always kind of thinking and feeling with a body that was about a couple weeks ago. Like I should have this in me, because we take our physical fitness and we're in our ability to achieve things and reach levels of performance and hit certain metrics in training, and we just kind of we hold on to them with dear life, like in our hands, squeezing them tightly, while the rest of the world around us is changing, and the rest of the world is impacting us differently, and the effort that you give is balanced out by the amount of stress that life is taking from you. And that's why you can't judge yourself each day on each effort on what the result is. It always has to be effort based. But learning that and being able to differentiate between how am I listening to this today and what am I seeing in my own personal physical signs, if is my heart rate too high? Am I getting really hot? Am I starting this run feeling really, really tight? Or do I feel really fresh? Or, there's all these signs that we kind of have for our own self, and that's how we should know, all right, I don't need to come out of the gate firing. I don't need to come out of the gate too hot. I need to kind of just I need to see where I am today so I can at least finish intelligently instead of kind of crashing, and in a very loud and really not so fun way. When you crash and burn in a workout, your first 30 to 45 minutes are probably pure bliss. Oh, I'm crushing it, I feel great. And the last 30 minutes, misery, as you walk home or call your wife to come get you at the corner of, humble and crushed ego. It's about listening to yourself, but that again, it's about paying attention and being in touch with yourself and where you are personally and how life is affecting you, and then doing it once a week, every other week, because everything is changing and everything impacts each other in one way or another, whether you like it or not. Whether it's sleep, whether it's nutrition, whether it's stress, whether it's your kids, whether it's your significant other, whether it's a sick dog. Like, everything impacts it. And so to just blindly follow your plan without objectively thinking and feeling for yourself is a recipe for disaster. And you have to communicate that with yourself, and via your training plan or making like a journal, or you need to communicate it with your coach. But it's about impact, and we're all impacted differently by different things on a daily basis, and they're all connected, and they will oftentimes, like, I can always tell for me, like, if I've had a really stressful day at work, or I feel like I'm not getting things done, or I had something happen, like, I will be sometimes, my patience level will be shorter with Hayden when he comes home from daycare.
Mhm.
Everything impacts each other, everything. And so to be naive enough, or to be so tunnel vision, to not think that and think that it's just in a vacuum and I can control it all and just take everything out, you might be able to do that for a moment, but at some point it's going to combust, and then when it does, it's going to combust epically, and you're going to have to take days, if not a week or two off. You can't just be in denial about where you are and what's happening. You have to be Well, and to not be that way, you have to be open to feeling those things and seeing those things and realizing that you're human and realizing that life happens and realizing that you have to be flexible. If you're rigid and you have to have things done a certain way, then everything else is broken. And that's a terrible way to live, but it's also a very difficult way to look at training in a healthy and happy way. If everything else is broken or not going right, if you have to make a tweak or an adjustment or day off, like that doesn't sound like fun to me. It needs to be flexible, it needs to be relaxed, it needs to be fun, it needs to complement you and your life, and it needs to be, your training needs to be a partner. It doesn't need to be something that, that's a vampire. It's taking, energy and life away from you. It should be giving it back.
Hmm. Yeah, and you talked about it earlier about just it being February, and now we're going to start seeing, the race posts and accomplishments of other people. And I don't know about, one of the traps. It's easy for me. That's why I think I get so like frustrated sometimes with social media is that you start seeing that, and if you're in a good place, it's a motivator, and if you're in a bad place, you start that idea of being the last one to your party again because you'll see, oh man, they've made improvements or they're doing this, and you're not there. So immediately you think back to 2 years ago when you were there, and you're like, I should be there.
Hmm.
And then the next thing you know, you're kind of snowballing the problem unless so you don't have to, prove anything to anybody else. You need to prove something to yourself right now. And that's what I always just try to keep in that mindset. It's difficult. You have to be fair and respectful and loving to yourself in this moment and where you are, and realize that just because you have a race coming up in your big races in September or October, uh, that doesn't mean that you have to be ready for it right now. And a lot of things can change. You just need to find the right pattern that's right for you, and you know, let it come to you.
Isn't it funny that we only kind of do that with fitness and with times and with races? Like I never look back and think, I don't know, man, I should really be back to where I was 7 years ago. I mean, I just, that's just how. No, you don't do that. Like with your life, like it's like every stage of your life is different. Every season of your life is different. You can't like, but we do that. So like, I'm never going to say, I don't know, man. I should be back there. Things are this way in life, but I should be back the way things used to be. No, no, thank you. I'll have none of that. But we do that with training and with life, and we hold on to these things. And again, that's why I think I'm a coach, so I don't think PRs are overrated, but I think they're overvalued because because what's not attached to those times is what's going on in your life, what is happening, like because how we measure success. And I think a lot of people do this as they're coming into races that are close. Is a lot of times you will look back and think, what's your definition of, like PR is your personal record, but like when you look back on things that have been challenging in your life, that you've overcome, that you toughed it out, that you showed some resiliency and some fortitude and some real, just internal strength. Like the result wasn't some like lottery win. It was the fact that you overcame something that would previously have been either impossible to do or really hard for you to do, but you did it. Those are what we usually look back and think, that was my best workout of the year. Is almost every single time is going to be, nope, this wasn't like my best data day. This was me at my best. And forget what the time said, forget what the race results said, forget what anything else said. This was my best me today. Whatever the result might be good, the result might be not as good, because when you judge things by PRs and podiums, you could go out and have your best day, and you could have managed life like the best you've ever managed it. You've kept things objective. You've kept your family a priority. You've kept things, the where they should be on your list of things that really matter, and you've balanced things well, and you've been happy, and you've been the healthiest you've ever been. And you go into a race, and you're a couple minutes short of your PR, or whatever, and you place down the line. Like to me, that's a great day. That's an incredible day, versus the same guy who may have over prioritized where triathlon really fits in their life and sacrificed too much and not being happy and just being obsessed with getting a time. And then you show up to a race and a bunch of other fast guys get there and you end up 20th and not 8th. You're going to be destroyed. Like, which one of those sounds like the most fun? I'll take doing life at its best. Like that. And again, that's what we should be striving for. That what we should be aiming for, to do life as our best, because I mean that's what we're always going to be judged on in the first place, is how we're going to do life the best. It's been I think one of the more interesting aspects of watching people mourn or celebrate and do things about talk about Kobe Bryant. Obviously, he's not the man who was perfect by any stretch, but the most interesting part for me has been seeing like all these stories people have been sharing that we've never heard. Like those have been people, not like, oh well, was this time he put up, yeah, you talk about the 81 point game, the championships, but the stuff that like moves you, the stuff that like, makes you think, God, like he was doing some of these things, like that's what people remember. And that's how we should look at our training and our life, is like, is how are we doing life? And no one does life perfectly. I definitely don't do life perfectly, but you want to say, I did my best today with life, and that result, just like training and just like every day of the week and every day of the year, is going to look totally different. Totally different. Because some of the most valuable days you're going to have this year are some of the days you're going to learn the most from, and you're going to find out who you truly are and what you're truly capable of, aren't going to be the days that were the most fun, that you felt the greatest, where you sat around all day and watched 8 seasons of your show on Netflix and didn't do anything but eat pizza and eat Reese's. Like, it might feel fun and great in the moment, but you ain't learning anything. You're not learning anything. You're just being lazy. But that's not what you're going to remember. You're going to look back and think, man, this day it was like really, really hard. But what I did learn and when I was able to grow was this. And that was me doing the best I could with life that day. And that's how you got to look at training. It's how can I be the best that I can be in life and in training. And that might look like something different every single day. That's why you can't script it. And that's why it's hard, because you can't script it and you can't predict it. You just have to do your best.
We can end it right there, buddy.
Yeah. Pull the plug on me. Get out a sponge. Try that experiment. Let me know how it goes. Oh, but no, we appreciate you listening. Podcast 344. If you haven't been, swing on by our awesome new website that Mike and a couple of our friends put together and built. It is awesome. It does a great job of showing you all the things we offer with coaching, training, camps, and then also really does an awesome job of highlighting our team and the community that we have. Go on over there, C26Triathlon.com. If you want to reach out to Mike directly, hit him up at crushingiron@gmail.com. Or if you need to get in touch with me, C26coach@gmail.com.
All right, man.
Talk to you Thursday.
Thursday it is.
See you, dude.